the substance or behaviour, my addictive substance, alcohol, my behaviour equally addictive towards people, places, things, which was about work, workaholic, relationships, trying to be perfect, things, collectors. I was always trying to be right with the world. And I was very trying as a person. I remember one person saying to me once, "I don't know how to be your friend because your standards are so high. I don't know what you'd do if you let me down, or if I let you down." And the answer was, I hadn't even thought about it. How would I forgive somebody if they let me down? And I don't know, because I don't know the concept of blame was really in me. If anything was wrong, I guess I felt it was my fault in some way. So I turned it inwards. All the anger was inwards to me. And sometimes it's outwards to other people when we get resentful in the addiction, whether it's substance or behaviour. And it comes out as self-harm, always. So self-harm is not necessarily a good place to be. And that's what addiction was for me. So from 24/7 drinker, not so long in that particular state, but certainly a dependent drinker for a long time. And certainly the first drink I ever took did do the damage, because it fixed me in some way. It made me either happy, joyful, sad, relaxed, soporific, sleepy, you name it. It took the edge off me. And often we say, let's have a drink to take the edge off. Well, these days I don't. Tea, coffee, maybe, yes, all that sort of stuff. But the gift these days is I realised what was going on. I also realised life couldn't get any worse. I mean, how many times do you have to go to emergency, to the hospital, to be revived in some way because you've overdone it? And how many times do you have to be implored by family, friends and those who love us to please do something about it? And the trouble is, if they can't do anything and we can't do anything, what do we do? Well, in the end I did get that moment of clarity. And some people call it a spiritual awakening, but it's, for me, just simply reality, and that's what spiritual is for me too, where I realised I couldn't do it on my own and I needed help. So I got help from professionals and also fellowship. So professionals played their part in helping me stabilise long enough to understand that there were people out there who had learned how to be sober. And the people who helped me most learn how to be sober, once having got clean or dry from the addiction, was the fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. So I speak a lot about AA and Alcoholics Anonymous and the fellowship, but I don't speak for it. I don't speak for the people in AA either. I'm just one of many. So you'll hear voices about, or hear, read and find information out about what the fellowship is. I'm just one voice. So I don't represent it, never can, never will. Unique, authentic people have their own voice where they choose. But if I didn't include AA, well, that would be ego for me. So with high regard for the fellowship, I share about it and what it does. So I'm in a good place because I went to a meeting yesterday. I haven't been able to attend meetings regularly, so I suppose I've been starved really of some of the oxygen of life, which is understanding how people stay in recovery. Notwithstanding that, I'm very lucky because I understand the literature and the steps, 12 steps which keep us safe, 12 steps of action to change my attitude and behaviour on a daily basis. Anyway, about AA, I share the statement of intent here, and then some of the literature and what's happening in my life. So first the AA statement of intent, or the AA Preamble, shared at every meeting, and it goes like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So it's very simple. A desire to stop drinking is the main reason for going. Just a desire, doesn't mean you've stopped. It's just finding out about how to get sober. And then when we're there, we share our experience, strength and hope. And it's really important that we hear from everybody who feels inclined to speak. So there's no need to speak if you don't want to. You just go along, listen. And as they say, you take the cotton wool out of your ears and put it in your mouth when you first go, simply so you can listen and hear to other people's wisdom about what it is to be sober. It doesn't mean you have to adopt their way. You find your own path, unique and authentic to you. And then there are these 12 steps which can help us, 12 steps of action to change our attitude and behaviour and experience life without drink or whatever it is we used to fix on. And that can be people, places and things as well. So it's all about finding balance, facing reality, whatever it is. And reality bites hard in recovery because we feel everything in the raw. So, going to the daily reflections, this book, 1 page a day, all about the 12 steps and 12 traditions of AA. What is the fellowship? And it talks about group autonomy. This is how AA works. There are just groups of people who get together and share experience, strength and hope. And this is something which is important. And this is what it says on April 29th. Some may think that we have carried the principle of group autonomy to extremes. For example, in its original long form, Tradition 4 declares, any 2 or 3 gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an Alcoholics Anonymous group, provided that as a group they have no other affiliation. So in other words, they only get together with a desire to keep sober and share their experience, strength and hope. But this ultra-liberty is not so risky as it looks. As an active alcoholic, I abused every liberty that life afforded. How could AA expect me to respect the ultra-liberty bestowed by Tradition 4? Learning respect has become a lifetime job. AA has made me fully accept the necessity of discipline, and that, if I do not assert it from within, that's from inside me, then I will pay for it. This applies to groups too. Tradition 4 points me in a spiritual direction in spite of my alcoholic inclinations. And the alcoholic inclination is to be completely self-absorbed, gripped often by ego, fear, and put on our brave face. So we don't actually have the liberty, freedom of choice to explore what is possible in life. We're still holding on and not letting go. So when it talks about ultra-liberty, and there is this one reason for getting together, it is the freedom to be ourselves. And if we're not free to be ourselves, how on earth do we learn? So the point of liberty is, the most important point of liberty is to understand that we get to be open, honest and willing to change our outlook. Hold on to the truth, find it once we've got it, and live well to good principles. So if we don't have the liberty to do that and we constrain ourselves, then we are putting ourselves in danger again of not learning where the boundaries are. So we have to learn life afresh in recovery and find new boundaries around good choices and good living. So what helps me is not to tread on the toes of other people, to observe that we are there with a desire to stop drinking and share experience, strength and hope. And it's not for me to judge other people, but to learn good things from them and not learn bad things from them. We're not perfect, so it's all about growth. So the gift is, or it's might call almost like a democratic anarchy sometimes. But it works because we learn how to live and be responsible for ourselves. And that serenity prayer at the end of these videos which I share is all about that. To God a good conscience, depending on our belief and understanding of spiritual. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, for me, is just for today. My video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour, or recovery from both substance and behaviour. my favourite substance used to be alcohol, until it bit me in the arse and I had to stop it. And that took 35 years. And what were the consequences of all of this? Well, 2 big careers, a lot of work, workaholic, relationshipaholic, trying to be perfect, never so, and then gymaholic, and then lifeaholic, and then I didn't want to live anymore, and fear, putting on a brave face, and ego pretty much got me doing things that other people wanted me to do, and diverted me from my own life. I didn't know who I was in the end. And was I a money-making machine, a drinking machine, a relationship machine, and never really knowing who I was. So the gift today is, on a daily basis, I get the idea of who I am. Just an ordinary person making progress. I'm never perfect. And what helped me most in this recovery of addiction to either substance or behaviour, because obviously my behaviour was towards perfection. What an idiot sometimes I feel, but actually I realised why I was the way I was, and that was because fear was part of my life, and it was part of my history and my background. So if we grow up that way, it's not surprising that we look for something to take the edge off, and to make our lives feel more happy, and also to deal with the sadness of life as well. So I managed in the end, after lots of medical support, family support and community support, to get to what is known as the Fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And really AA is the mainstay of my sobriety, one day at a time. So I go to meetings of AA, of which there are 600 or so in London, and at every meeting this preamble is shared as a statement of what AA is there to do. And it goes like this, and please understand I don't speak for AA, I just speak about my experience, strength and hope of living. Yes, I need to remind myself of that every day. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I was at a meeting last night, and the person sharing had a powerful message about what it's like to be in the fellowship, and then for whatever reason of depression or anxiety or anger or resentment, we go out again and relapse and have a real good drink. And you know, from my first meeting to my second meeting, it was 5 years. That's how much I felt about AA. I didn't want to go there because I didn't want to stop drinking, and I didn't want to stop blotting out the pain, because I was in pain. And the chair last night reminded me just how fearful I was when I first got to AA. I was frightened of everything. I was frightened of living. I was frightened of waking up, but I wasn't actually frightened of not waking up. It was preferable. So how distorted is that? You know, it's insane that we would want to not wake up in the morning. But that's where it took me. And I wasn't the only one. It happens to many people. And being driven mad by not being able to achieve or not being able to value ourselves. You know, fear, brave face, ego, rather than some courage, faith and confidence. So really, the fellowship helps me keep the courage, faith and confidence even when life is difficult. And it hasn't been easy these last few months. My diabetes has been difficult, and clinical depression has been difficult. But things are on an even keel, just about. I can feel my cold abating now, so I'm in a strange place of there's nothing nagging at me as I wake up. So when I woke up and asked myself, how am I feeling, why, what can I do? That's asserting who I am. How am I feeling? Okay just now. Why? Because things seem to be in balance. What I need to do today is make sure I keep on balance if I can, not pick up any resentments, and make this day work as best it can. Anyway, my videos in April are about the 12-step program, step 4, 4th month, 4th step, and all the steps are about action and changes in our behaviour, attitudes and behaviour. And step 4 is all about the fearless moral inventory. It's a self-appraisal of our assets and liabilities, and where our resentments were, and what we did about them, and why were we carrying this burden when the rest of the world had probably forgotten about most of what we were resenting. And these days I try not to resent me. And you know, it's difficult sometimes when you ask yourself, how did I get to be in my 50s, and only start to understand what life might be about? I don't have the answer. The answer occurs as each day passes. And the gift is, I understand what is spiritual these days, and spiritual is seeing reality with less denials and less filters, or at least that's what it works out for me, because we need to be spiritual in the moment of now. Otherwise, what is spiritual? It's just a concept, or an idea we have of being better at something than we thought we are. So experience strength and hope on a daily basis improves my understanding of reality and helps to keep myself on track and the equal of others, not bigger, not smaller, just being a part of life, and included rather than excluded by my behaviour. Well, much of the time I was a passive drunk and people pleased, as they say, but you know, we all have our way, and the gift is, Gandhi said something, one of his sayings, an emphatic no is better than a half-hearted yes. So that's part of my philosophy these days, but it's bloody hard to learn it. I go through the daily reflections, which I'll do now, one page a day, and I also use As Bill Sees It. So for April 29th in the daily reflections, it's all about group autonomy, tradition 4, that thing I was talking about yesterday. Some may think that we have carried the principle of group autonomy to extremes. For example, in its original long form, Tradition 4 declares, any 2 or 3 gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided that as a group they have no other affiliation. But this ultra-liberty is not so risky as it looks. In other words, we have to have our freedom to make our choices. As an active alcoholic, I abused every liberty that life afforded. How could AA expect me to respect the ultra-liberty bestowed by Tradition 4? Learning respect has become a lifetime job. AA has made me fully accept the necessity of discipline, I guess responsibility too, and that if I do not assert it from within, then I will pay for it. This applies to groups too. Tradition 4 points me in a spiritual direction, in spite of my alcoholic inclinations. So if my defects come out, fear, brave facing and ego, when I don't get my own way, surely I should have a little bit more courage, faith and confidence to see where things are going, as a group or as an individual. Oh yes, it's not as easy as it sounds, and as in Bill Sees It for today, I do these linearly and not in any particular order, but it says here on page 89, review the day. And that's all about doing an inventory on a daily basis. So when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving to all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, or what we could pack into the stream of life? We must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to ourselves and to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness, or in good conscience, and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. And, you know, the question of God comes up a lot, especially if doing a fearless moral inventory, because you haven't got to do anything actually. It's suggested that you look at your defects of character, those things we do too much of which are unhelpful, and also our assets, which are around courage, faith and confidence, which are, I guess, are the 7 virtues as opposed to the 7 vices. And if we have a pure heart, or an outlook which is not just about what am I going to get out of this, but what are we going to get out of this, I get to a place of empathy. So my assertiveness, how am I feeling, why, what can I do? And my empathy is, how are we feeling, why, and what can we do? So it's about inclusion, not exclusion. And inclusion involves love and fellowship. So that's where we get to. So when I say, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference, it is just for today. London, all about recovery and Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't speak for AA, I speak for myself. However, AA is integral to my daily well-being and here's the AA Preamble spoken at all meetings of AA. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I've just been reading some more from this book, Practicing the Power of Now, and I'll try and read a few minutes of it, because it seems very appropriate to me at this moment in time. And the time factor thing will come in as I go along, so please bear with me. I'm learning as I go when I read it. So, Chapter 3, Entering the Now. With the timeless dimension comes a different kind of knowing, one that does not kill, the spirit that lives within every creature and everything, and knowing that does not destroy the sacredness and mystery of life, but contains a deep love and reverence for all that it is, a knowing of which the mind knows nothing. Break the old pattern of present moment denial and present moment resistance. Make it your practice to withdraw attention from the past and future whenever they are not needed. Step out of the time dimension as much as possible in everyday life. If you find it hard to enter the now directly, start observing the habitual tendency of your mind to want to escape from the now. You will observe that the future is usually imagined as either better or worse than the present. If the imagined future is better, it gives you hope or pleasurable anticipation. If it is worse, it creates anxiety. Both are illusory. Though self-observation may, more presence comes into your life automatically. Through self-observation, more presence comes into your life automatically. The moment you realize you are not present, you are present. Whenever you are able to observe your mind, you are no longer trapped in it. Another factor has come in, something that is not of the mind, the witnessing presence. Be present as the watcher of your mind, of your thoughts and emotions, as well as your reactions in various situations, but at least as interested in your reactions as in the situation or person that causes you to react. Notice also how often your attention is in the past or future. Don't judge or analyse what you observe. Watch the thought, feel the emotion, observe the reaction. Don't make a personal problem out of them. You will then feel something more powerful than any of those things that you will observe. The still, observing presence itself behind the content of your mind, the silent watcher. Intense presence is needed when certain situations trigger a reaction with a strong emotional charge, such as when your self-image is threatened. A challenge comes into your life that triggers fear. This goes wrong, or an emotional complex that from the past is brought up. In those instances, the tendency is for you to become unconscious. The reaction or emotion takes you over. You become it. You act it out. You justify, make wrong, attack, defend. Except that if it isn't you, it's the reactive pattern of the mind in its habitual survival mode. Identification with the mind gives it more energy. Observation of the mind withdraws energy from it. Identification with the mind creates more time. Observation of the mind opens up the dimension of the timeless. The energy that is withdrawn from the mind turns into presence. Once you can feel what it means to be present, it becomes much easier to simply choose to step out of the time dimension whenever time is not needed for practical purposes and move more deeply into the now. This does not impair your ability to use time, past or future, when you need to refer to it for practical matters, nor does it impair your ability to use your mind. In fact, it enhances it. When you do use your mind, it will be sharper and more focused. The enlightened person's main focus of attention is always the now, but they are still peripherally aware of time. In other words, they continue to use clock time, but are free of psychological time. So it's a bit like getting out of those sticky parts where we're always imagining it's going to be the same again, or we say to ourselves, here we go again. And that fastens us into the moment, or rather into a historical way of reacting to what is going on around us. And it's almost like waiting at a bus stop, and your experience always is waiting forever, where the mind wanders into disappointment and disarray, and you find yourself in dark thoughts rather than light thoughts, or feelings, and feelings of imagining, well, it's feelings of being able to appreciate that very one moment more fully, because if we weren't in that calamity of time wasted, or feeling like it is, we can observe what is going on around us, and it's to see life as is, and to be, I suppose, an appreciator of what is around us, and that way we keep our fascination and our imagination open to what is there. Anyway, going on, it says, letting go of psychological time. Learn to use time in the practical aspects of your life. We call it clock time. But immediately return to the present moment awareness when those practical matters have been dealt with. In this way, there will be no build-up of psychological time, which is identification with the past and continuous compulsive projection into the future. It's always going to be like this. If you set yourself a goal and work toward it, you are using clock time. You are aware of where you want to go, but you honour and give your fullest attention to the step that you are taking at this moment. If you then become excessively focused on the goal, perhaps because you are seeking happiness, fulfillment, or a more complex sense of self in it, the now is no longer honoured. It becomes reduced to a mere stepping stone to the future, with no intrinsic value. Clock time, then, it turns into psychological time. Your life's journey is no longer an adventure, just an obsessive need to arrive, to attain, to make it. You no longer see or smell the flowers by the wayside either, nor are you aware of the beauty and the miracle of life that unfolds all around you when you are in the present, in the now. Are you always trying to get somewhere other than where you are? Is most of your doing just as a means to an end? Is fulfillment always just around the corner, or confined to short-lived pleasures such as sex, food, drink, drugs, or thrills and excitement, or even rock and roll? And you always focused on becoming, achieving and attaining, or alternatively chasing some new thrill or pleasure? Do you believe that if you acquire more things you will become more fulfilled, good enough, or psychologically complete? Are you waiting for a man or a woman to give you meaning to your life? In the normal, mind-identified or unenlightened state of consciousness, the power and infinite creative potential that lie concealed in the now are completely obscured by psychological time. Your life then loses its vibrancy, its freshness, its sense of wonder. I think I've heard this described as being bored by many people, where we have an agitated intellectual capacity for more, and yet we don't know what we're looking for, because it's right under our nose. The old patterns of thought, emotion, behaviour, reaction and desire are acted out in endless repeated performances. I know this so well. A script in your mind that gives you an identity of source, but distorts or covers up the reality of the now, which is, I can't see it. The mind then creates an obsession with the future as an escape for the unsatisfactory present, which is often trying to manipulate the future to look like some past event which was pleasurable. What you perceive as future is an intrinsic part of your state of consciousness now. If your mind carries a heavy burden of the past, you will experience more of the same. The past perpetuates itself through lack of presence. The quality of your consciousness at this moment is what shapes the future, which of course can only be experienced as the now. If it is this quality of your consciousness at this moment that determines the future, then what is it that determines the quality of your consciousness, your degree of presence? So the only place where true change can occur, and when the past can be dissolved, is in the now. We can't do it anywhere other place, and it's so easy to be bamboozled. We can, because we have self-will and self-obsession.